Hello and welcome back to the Cookie Jar Golf Podcast. I am Tom Mills, and today we are entering a series of podcasts and films that will go on for the next 6 to 7 weeks. So this first podcast is with Cees Collart, who is the head of sustainability at the R&A. And we met up with Cees in Eindhoven after playing Eindhoven, which was the first stop on our trip to the Netherlands. This is going to be the first of 5 podcasts that we do on the Netherlands trip, and also launching this evening is the first of 7 films on our trip to the Netherlands, and that will be coming live tonight at 7 p.m. That's Tuesday the 17th of January, so keep your eyes and ears peeled moving forward over the next few weeks for all the content that we're releasing over the Netherlands. Big shout out to our series sponsor FootJoy, who helped make this dream trip a reality. We're really lucky to get to partner with such an iconic brand, and FootJoy are the number one shoe on tour. They're trusted by more PGA players than any other and have been since 1945. Little interesting footnote, Walter Hagen selected FootJoy as his footwear of choice for the 1927 Ryder Cup. In 1928, Johnny Farrell was the first player to win a tournament in FootJoy shoes, beating Bobby Jones at Olympia Fields, and FootJoy have gone on to win over 6,500 more tournaments since. And whilst the designs have changed over the last 100 years, the ethos of great tradition and classic design remain constant. The Premier Series comes in 5 designs, with the Packard, Tarlow, Flintfield and Wicklow for 2023. Once again, we're delighted to be partnering with FootJoy in the series, and we're a huge fan of their products, so a huge thank you for them for supporting Cookie Jar and helping us bring this content to you. It means a lot to us. For more info on any FootJoy products, head over to @FootJoy Europe or visit www.footjoy.co.uk. And without further ado, it's over to our first pod from the Netherlands, Cees Collart.
Watch this.
Our rich vein of form of recording podcasts in great locations just gets better and better. I'm joined, I should say, by Bruce on my right.
Good evening.
Welcome back to the Cookie Jar Golf Podcast, Bruce.
Rich.
And now we are joined on my left by Cees Collart. Cees.
Good evening, boys.
Where are we sat?
We are sat at the committee room at Eindhoven Golf, and I'm very delighted to have you here.
Start of a great tour.
As you corrected us earlier, there is no golf club in the name, is there?
No, correct. I think we're the only one in the Netherlands, the only golf club that doesn't have the word club in its official name. So it was founded as Eindhoven Golf, and it has always remained Eindhoven Golf. So we are pretty unique in that as well.
I was really kicked out of the place when I sort of showed an Instagram post to you earlier, and you said, there's no club. I've told you this 3 times.
Yeah.
It's so ridiculous.
I'm glad you're taking heed of the audit function a bit
We're
more.
not going to do a full deep dive on Eindhoven today because we've got films coming up, we've got podcasts galore, etc. So we will cover it in its fullest, but I think it would be remiss not to say what a great day we've had there today. First hit of golf in the Netherlands, and what a day. What a day.
And Cees, thank you so much for setting it all up and having us. It's been fantastic.
Yeah, it's been my pleasure to host you guys here at Eindhoven and to set up all the other top 5 courses in the Netherlands for you. So I hope you will enjoy the coming 4 days as much as you did enjoy today.
Can't miss, can we?
Yeah.
Cees, we wanted to do this podcast for a while, talking about sustainability. As the chairman of the Sustainability Committee within the R&A, but before we get too close to that subject, I thought it'd be quite helpful to talk about your background in golf in the Netherlands a bit in general, and also what you do for work outside, because I think there's some synergies there. So am I right in thinking you joined Eindhoven in 86, you said to me?
Yes,
So you've been here a while. Was that the start of golf for you?
No, that wasn't a start. I had played golf for a number of years before, and my parents were members here at Eindhoven, and I joined a local club in our village because all my friends played golf there. And in 1986, they went to another course. There was a new course built, and I thought, well, there's no use to moving to that course now when my parents are here at Eindhoven. So that's when I moved to Eindhoven. Yeah, correct. And before that, my parents used to send me to England every summer. And the family I stayed with, the guy was a golfer. So that was at Market Drayton Golf Club.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah. So in the Midlands, pretty close to you guys. And that's where I started my golf career, if you will. And the funny thing was, my dad was in agricultural machinery, and he was a non-executive director of a company there in Market Drayton, which was called SKH, Salopian Kenneth Hudson Limited.
Okay. Yeah.
And this guy, the director, which was the family I stayed with every summer, he always took me to the Royal Highland Show, and I was very lucky because that was in Edinburgh on the showgrounds next to the airport, and he showed me all the great courses in East Lothian to start with. So the first experiences I had on a golf course outside of the Netherlands was at Muirfield and Gillen 1 and 2, and and Loughness, New, and all these fantastic courses. Yeah. So I was very lucky from the very start, I guess.
Incredible stuff. And then you've played quite a bit competitively through the Netherlands. Obviously, things like the Foursomes Club of Holland, you hold a good handicap, you play a lot. Was it always just a big amateur pastime for you, just getting better, playing the game? What were the sort of things that really sort of sucked you into the game itself?
I've always been pretty much a traditionalist, I think, and becoming a member of the Foursomes Club of Holland was a big thing for me, because that's the summit of traditionalism in golf in the Netherlands, I suppose. And let's say of the 10 Dutch RNA members, 9 of them are members of the Foursomes Club as well. So through 2 of the Foursomes Club members, I.F. Knappert and Rolf Holland, they were my proposer and seconder for the RNA, so that took me into the RNA as well. That brought me into the RNA as well. So I've been really, really privileged and lucky, in that extent. I've never been an extremely high-level competitor or anything. I mean, I played on the first team here, but only for a couple of years, and I've never played big international matches or stuff like that. So no, not up to that extent, but I'm happy I can still play to a handicap of 1. So I'm very happy. It's too low for me actually, but there you go.
Brilliant. And then obviously your involvement with the sustainability committee, knowing what you do for a living, did that come about partly because of what you're involved in professionally, or? I
guess so. I think it's the combination. My work, I work in ESG investments, so there's a lot of sustainability involved there. I run a private investment fund in renewable energy, and we invest someone else's money, by the way, in around 2 topics. One is the value chain of photovoltaic solar, and the other is industrial LED lighting. Okay. So I do know what's going on in that world. And at the same time, the other side, I was on the Greens Committee here at Eindhoven for 14 years, and in the General Committee for 10 years. And I did the same at Golf Club de Dommel. I was on their Greens Committee for 10 years, so I knew quite a bit about it. We had the Dutch Women's Open here at Eindhoven, and I was on the championship committee responsible for the golf course. So I knew a bit about that. And so somehow they found out at the RNA, I guess, and they approached me whether I wanted to join their Sustainable Golf Committee, or Sustainability Committee as it was called at that time. Okay. And so I joined 4 years ago, and I start chairing it after Charles Harrison's term was up. He was the past captain at Sunningdale, and he sadly died earlier this year. Lovely man. But he asked me if I wanted to succeed him, which I did. And, the rest is history, basically. Yeah.
And is there a big thing with obviously the Netherlands? You know, you guys have some of the, as an outsider, it would seem, some of the strictest agronomical sort of restrictions around how you can operate and what you can do. You guys over here are kind of pretty much at the vanguard of sustainable agronomy and course maintenance, would you say?
Yeah, I think so. It's something typically Dutch, which I'm not against, don't get me wrong here, but I believe we always want to be the best pupil in the class. Right. Whereas I think, hey guy, being number 2 or 3 would be good enough as well. So that means that, let's say, geo-certification, for example, was already here for a long time before the rest of Europe started to work on that. And but what I did actually, my personal belief, when the committee at the RNA was still called Sustainability Committee, I thought it was just slightly too much on the tree hugging side, if you catch my drift. And I thought, let's think this over very clearly, because what we are really good at the RNA is agronomy. and we arguably have the best agronomists in the world. We employ them, they run our championships and what have you. So I thought if we could practice sustainability through agronomy, then we could really influence things. Whereas if you speak about, do you have LED lighting in your light bulbs in the clubhouse, or are you flushing your toilet with rainwater? I mean, the law will take care of,
isn't it? Yeah.
Law will take care of that anyway. So what we did is 2 years ago, when Martin Slumbers entered the RNA and succeeded Peter Dawson, he introduced a strategy for the RNA as a whole business, for RNA Limited basically. And this strategy was renewed last summer. And I took the opportunity to change our strategy a bit as well. So to move basically into sustainable agronomy as our main topic.
Got you.
Yeah.
So before there was a lot of stuff that would be on the peripheries for clubs about, like, you know, electric charging points in car parks and things like that. And it's now like, just let nature run its course now.
I guess that's still important. Part of it is the maybe transitioning over to more electric mowers and course maintenance tools. I guess does that still form part of it in a way?
It does. Basically, what we did when revising our strategy is building our strategy, or basically our tactics, and bring it into practice around 5 pillars. So the first one is sustainable championship agronomy. So running our 29 championships, including the Open and the Women's Open and the Amateur and what have you. The second is sustainable agronomy services. So commercial services we are setting up to bring out into the country to clubs
to support clubs.
You're using them. You're using it at Blackwell at the moment.
Alistair Beggs and his
so
work
we
there.
started this in GB&I, and we are intending to go into Europe in half a year's time or so.
Okay.
So that's the second. The third is Golf Course 2030, which is the research program around sustainable agronomy. So basically, we ask our affiliates, the RNA affiliates, to come up with plans, but they need to be very specific, boots on the ground, ready to use solutions. We are not after all sorts of research where the researcher says at the end of his program, fine, and now we need even more research. That's not what we want. We want practical, ready to use solutions stuff for the greenkeeping staff, for the club managers, etc. So that's the third we do. Then the fourth is a greenkeeping education and scholarship program around sustainable agronomy, because I think it's important that greenkeeping becomes more sexy again, if you will, because at this moment it's very hard to get to get new greenkeepers, and I think they really should be taught how to do it differently, because quite often they have been educated as farmers, if you will, and at least in Holland, it's slightly better in the UK, but in Holland, there isn't hardly any real greenkeeper education, so they think as farmers, but as famous agronomists said before, if you think like farmers and do the opposite, that's basically what you want to do in greenkeeping, and. So that's the fourth pillar, and the fifth is called Green Links, which is our program around sustainability at the Open Championship and the Women's Open Championship. So that's a bit on the softer side. So I'd say 80% is agronomy based, and 20% is around like zero waste to landfill, or source all your produce locally, or make sure that the players are being transported in electric cars, being charged by our own solar arrays around,
just like
stuff like that. No more plastic water bottles on the golf course, and all sorts of stuff like that. So those are the 5 pillars. So it's quite a change compared to what we previously did.
It's quite interesting, though, in a sense. I mean, I remember vividly chatting to you about this earlier in the year, Cees, when you were telling me about how there's this great synergy in terms of what clubs and I hate to use the word consumers, but basically people who are playing golf, whether it's as members, whether it's the touring golfer, visitors generally are looking for in terms of the surfaces they want to play on. Yeah. If you want more resilient grass types and ergo better surfaces year round, that also plays into the sustainability agenda, which is
Yeah.
your kind of the agronomical aspect to what you're
Yeah,
talking
it's
about.
interesting you say that, Bruce, because I always say if you want it in one sentence, what do? We try to deliver proper playing surfaces based on less water, less fertilizer, and less pesticides. That's our main goal that we are trying to achieve, which means that the greenkeeper needs to practice drier greenkeeping. And if you were to divide them, let's say wet greenkeeping is slightly easier than dry greenkeeping. You need to be slightly more on top of your game when you do the dry.
Why is that? You can
greenkeeping.
throw more fertilizer. You can push the greens to the edge, but then water them heavily. You can you can cut them shorter because you can get more nappy grass. Is it about getting more of the finer grasses into the green surfaces?
No, it is that the grass grows more easily, but it has to do with the farmer type of thinking as well, because a farmer's son thinks in harvesting, in green, in rich, in much, whereas if you go to a proper golf course, it's dry. It's fast, it's firm. The grass doesn't grow that quickly. There is no lush grass around. It's all very thin. It's very fine, and it's all being produced to make the ball roll evenly and properly, etc. Whereas on a wet golf course, it's much more difficult to get to proper green speeds. Or you have to cut them really low.
Yeah.
But if you have to do that, the lower you cut your grass, the lower the shorter the root structure will get, which makes the grasses more prone to diseases and what have you. So it's perfectly logical.
How do you do that?
Do it that way?
Because I guess try and tie a few threads together. We did a really good podcast with a Greens chairman, Dara Garahy at Portmarnock, and obviously they're very rich in fescue, so they can cut at 4 mil.
Yeah.
And they can have billiard-like surfaces to putt on. It's like putting on this table.
Yeah.
Whereas you go to a club like Blackwell, which is not particularly high in fescue count, and yet to get the same green speeds, you'd need to cut them significantly lower. How much of this is determined by the land you've got the golf on versus the work the greenkeeper can do to get more finer grasses into the ground?
Very, very valid point. I'd say there's a great, if you are lucky enough to have your course based on sandy soil, like we do here at Eindhoven. Yeah. So Heathland-style golf courses are normally based on very dry sandy soil, which is perfect, which is not exactly the same as seaside courses, as links courses, because their pH tends to be much higher up. Here, the soils are much more acid. But that's an advantage as well, because only the very fine-leaved grasses will grow there. And that is what you want to get rid of the Poa annua, who is in general, let's say, who is the general enemy.
Yeah, yeah.
And in order to get a Poa annua green up to a proper speed, you would have to cut it down really shortly. And that shortens the root structure again, which makes your green weaker and more vulnerable. Whereas if you cut your fine-leaved fescues and bents on 4 mil or even 4.5, and you keep them dry and you roll them regularly, etc., it's agronomically much more responsible, if you will, but you can still come to the same types of green speeds. Whereas I'm not a big fan. Well, I like putting on quick greens, but I think the proper regular membership speed would be around 9 or 9.5.
10 is probably as most you want to go for the amateur player.
Like you experienced today here at Eindhoven, and not much more than that. And if you take the Open Championship, for example, normally we don't go over 10 because of the simple fact that, especially at St Andrews at the 11th, we can't hold the ball on the green anymore. This year we had a slightly different approach. We said, let's bring them to 11 unless the wind is picking up. But it was flat calm on Thursday, Friday, Saturday and Sunday, so hardly any wind. So we had our green speeds slightly higher than we would have normally, around 10.6, 10.7.
The fairways were much faster, weren't they? The fairways were like, 12 or 13 in parts?
Yeah, but what the real deal was, the firmness of the golf course and of the greens and the aprons particularly. Normally a fast golf course would clack. It's the clack impact hammer that you measure it with. So the value would lie around 125 maybe, or 130. That's really firm. And we got it up to way over 155 this year, which, but it means these guys are so good because they generate such high spin rates. Their swing speed is so high, so the spin rates are much higher. So they are still able to control the ball. Whereas at Muirfield, for the Women's Open, for example, their swing speeds are slightly lower, so their spin rates are slightly lower. So we had the greens at 125 there. Mm-hmm. So that's it's but I think the golf course at St Andrews this year was a perfect example of very sustainable greenkeeping, and also for a very challenging golf course. And it was quite amazing what Cam Smith did on the Sunday. But the rest
was incredible
of the field, there weren't any 62s or 61s or what have you, but he shot an incredible good round, and because we really tucked away the pins in very quirky corners, and it was really difficult, but he really
it's a great
played
championship to watch. I think, just jumping off topic of sustainable greenkeeping for a second, but reflecting back on that Open, there was a lot of panic leading up to the tournament that the professionals were going to bring it to its knees, and we didn't want to see that happen to the old course. But ultimately, you want to see the best tournament, don't you? You want to see the best players at the top of the leaderboard, and you want to see a great tournament that's a great spectacle. And I think we delivered. The scores were low, but there wasn't much wind. I don't know where you stand on that. I don't see this as being protecting par at what cost to the world's best players. I don't think it achieves a huge amount, do you?
No, I fully agree with you. I'm not always too happy about, let's say, the way the Americans go about this. Try to make your golf course as hard as you possibly can to make sure no one breaks par. There's not a great deal of fun in there, is it?
But the majors have been great this year because we've seen things. Yeah, I would say actually, and there was a great episode with Jeff Shackelford and Andy Johnson on the Fried Egg talking about the 4 majors of the year and the fact how they delivered so well because it actually produced a great leaderboard, and they weren't ridiculously penal golf courses. So just a bit of a distraction there. Yeah. How much of this is on the golfer's expectation? So how much of sustainable greenkeeping ultimately is a result of high expectations of the club golfer? People want to see 11 or 12 on their greens on a Saturday morning. How much does the everyday golfer need to probably relax their own expectations around course presentation, do you think?
I think they need to be relaxed very much, and I think it's the duty of every golf club and every committee, etc., to educate them, if you will, on that, because we're not in America. We're not on a golf course that's on television every day. We're not. It's slightly different here, and I mean, the pace of play will go up tremendously if your greens are way too quick. And so that's why I said I think 9.5 for regular membership play is more than enough. It's more than enough. And then for your club championships, fine. You give them an extra cut and you give them an extra roll and you add another foot. Well, fine. Then they are 10.5. Well, excellent. But yeah, that... I think 9.5 is absolutely fine, and I think we should try to educate golfers around this, because the trueness of the roll of the ball, that's what it's all about, as long as it rolls out.
And fairways.
That's all you want. I mean, it's funny, isn't it, in a way, everything we've sort of been talking about over the last 10 or 15 minutes, really. It's similar to debates in a slightly different, although obviously connected topic in terms of course architecture and how there's a lot of courses now undertaking master plans and getting in professional architects to look at stripping out trees and trying to recapture some of the wisdom of the original architects who laid out these courses, quite often sort of that golden age in and around 1930, particularly in Holland. And it seems to be the same with greenkeeping, in that we're recapturing some of that ancient wisdom about making the courses, drying them out, and encouraging the finer grasses that are more resilient to take over and actually move away from, not wanting to lay the blame too much at Americans, but the image that maybe quite a lot of people were persuaded by over the last 30, 40 years of seeing these lush green grasses on the sort of television on these tournament courses, where there's a huge amount of money and these sort of natural resources going into presenting them, and actually it's quite sort of artificial, and in a way it's not really benefiting the game for
Augusta is
Yeah.
almost the
Yeah.
worst thing in some respects for
Well, yeah,
what
I
you're
think
trying
so.
to achieve, because it's the pin-up, it's the poster girl for that's an unattainable standard, right? And it comes at a time of the year when people are absolutely ready for that image.
Yeah, but one mustn't forget, I mean, all the technology that's behind that,
Yeah.
and their sub-air systems on the greens and what have you.
Putting ice on the azaleas to make
Exactly,
sure they bloom.
exactly.
Do
bloom
they
at the right
actually?
time.
No, they
there's-
don't.
Who knows?
Is that right?
It's
Have you heard
part of
that?
the legend of it. They probably encourage
They put
them.
ice on the azaleas.
If they're going to come into bloom too early, they just
No, they all do that, and they put all sorts of additives in the water so to make it color more blue, and there's all sorts of stuff going on, which is fine with me. But what I must say about Augusta National, by the way, is that they, over the past years, they've kept their course much firmer than they used to do in the old days. Which I believe is a general trend I see in America on the top courses, is that they bring it much more back into the original state, and they tend to go faster and firmer as well.
Do they?
Yeah, because it's not only an advantage from an agronomy perspective, it's also a huge advantage from an architectural perspective, because in the old days, it was very important. The architects worked with the landforms, and you needed to have your ball exactly on that spot. Otherwise, you couldn't get to the green or to a certain pin or what have you. Whereas if it's much softer, it doesn't matter. It's just like,
Target
playing
golf, isn't it?
target
Darts.
golf, playing the darts. And I think in America, you see the trends now with, let's say, Philadelphia Cricket Club and Marion and all these clubs. Also in California, they tend to keep their courses much firmer than they used to, which I think is a very good trend, because, well, it's not only from an sustainable agronomy perspective, but
But it brings
also
the architecture alive, doesn't
exactly,
it? The
exactly.
width, the angles, the
Yeah.
slopes, and
Yeah.
everything
And
like that become.
I think the scoring as well. That there's been a number of sort of studies or just kind of statistical analyses showing that this belief that we were all sort of labouring under the assumption 10, 20 years ago that you need to make a course 7,500, 8,000 yards to challenge the best players in the world actually doesn't hold water, that argument, because they will still go and shoot 30 under. I mean,
Yeah.
If you got
is it
Augusta
Kapalua?
clegging at 140,
Well,
I think
yeah.
they'd struggle.
But Kapalua or wherever it is in Hawaii, where they're stretching the course out north of 7,600 yards, and yet they still quite regularly will go and shoot north of 25 under around there.
Yeah.
It's actually the really firm, fiery courses, the likes of Shinnecock Hills, where it's, okay, granted, maybe they flirt with losing the golf course to, to quote Zach Johnson. That's actually where, the best players in the world are really under duress.
It's quite funny if you take Royal St George's last summer, for example. We were very unlucky whilst preparing the golf course, because it had been raining a lot in the week up to the event. And I remember speaking to Alistair Baggs quite a few times, and he said, how's it going? And he says, well, yeah, it's still I wanted to go there, but I couldn't go due to COVID. I wasn't allowed into the UK, so I had everything booked and everything nice. And Evelyn, she wanted to go as well, but we couldn't go there. So I had them on the phone regularly, and on the Thursday and the Friday, it was still way too moist, way too wet. And then on the Saturday, he said, well, I'm pretty okay now. But on Sunday, he said, this is really the way we wanted the course to be the entire week. But okay, hey-ho. I mean, when it rains, it rains. And but still, Royal St George's is always, it's very nice and quirky, and the ball could go several ways unintendedly and what have you.
Which is part of it, though.
Yeah, that's part of the deal if you play there. And I think even in wetter circumstances, they really managed to get the golf course up to a good standard. And in the weekend, it was really what they really wanted, our agronomy staff. And so then they worked very closely together with the new head greenkeeper there, and what's his name, Paul
Larson.
Yeah, exactly, Paul
Previous
Larson.
guest of the pod,
Yeah, fellow
actually.
podcast guest.
Yeah, I know.
Actually,
I listened to it. Yeah.
Yeah, the rock star green.
Yeah, the rock star. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, he
High
blew
tops and a crazy,
Twitter up, didn't he, when he
Yeah.
was on those
How
pictures.
did he?
Yeah, when in his like full regalia with the hair and stuff. He's once met, never forgotten character. Just looking at some of the stuff you talked about there, helping clubs, there's a couple of issues that I guess from a sustainability point of view are pretty key. One of them is trees on golf courses and tree removal, because where firm conditions are complementary to the architecture, trees, which are sometimes seen as good for the environment, are often in opposition to good architecture and entropy, and as trees grow in and canopies and everything like that. Is there like a sustainability or an RNA stance when it comes to what's a sustainable approach to tree care?
Okay. In general, I would agree with you that, but coming from a heathland as well as a woodland area at Eindhoven, it's not that I'm a big hater of trees or anything. And I know Colt was very specific about this. Okay, if there needs to be a tree, okay, fine, but not too many of them and what have you. I think what we try to achieve is sustainable, proper playing surfaces, but we try to reach higher states of biodiversity as well. So the combination of the two. So I'm not necessarily against trees or anything, as long as they are not too close to the golf course. That's basically what it is.
Because they can be restrictive to the airflow and the light, which then makes it harder to generate the grass, which means you might need to use more chemicals to get the playing surfaces you need, right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, that is correct. So what we did here at Eindhoven, for example, in the winters of 2015 and 2016, well, it's a large estate, as you've seen today, but we took out 3,800 trees. And
so
we
many.
thought, 3,800, hang on a minute. And then we did drone flights in the spring when the trees got their new leaves on the tree, etc. And we flew over the golf course with a drone. And we just couldn't tell the difference.
Wow.
So, yeah.
And the trees are healthier because they've got more room then as well. So
That is a big part that gets lost, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is the idea that we need more and more trees, but actually they're all then competing for
the same
water. And I think you made a great point out on the course. You took us over the back of the 16th tee
Correct.
box.
Yeah, 15 and 16.
Yeah, the 15th green, 16th tee box area, and pointed out at what used to be a sort of body of water. I don't know whether you call it like a lake, but essentially it's now become quite marshy because there's just thousands of trees that are all competing for the same water, really.
Correct. Yeah, we did, we did some research on that, and it came out that the abundance of trees there, they consumed so much water that the water table in the pond, in the lake itself, suffered because of it. And so now we have decided not to remove all trees. Of course, we're not going to remove all trees, but if you get rid of too many, well, there can be too many. Yeah. And if you take them out and you get and remove all the low scrub and what have you, not only your golf course looks much better, but you get much better agronomical circumstances as well. You create them. And in this specific example, the lake, the pond will benefit of it as well because the water table can get higher again. So it's basically killing three birds with one stone.
You have to be more clever, don't you? I mean, you talked about it. I think in the Netherlands, you guys can't use chemicals or fertilizers that would. Is it scrubs? What the
Schaefer grubs?
Schaefer
grubs. Yeah.
So instead, what are you doing about that? So you can't. Yeah, they're like little insects on the fairways, right?
Yeah, correct. They normally arrive in May, June, just in 2 weeks' time, and then they're all gone. But the damage is done then because they lay their eggs in the grass, and they develop into larvae. And these larvae, they feed themselves on the roots of the grass. And when the larvae are large enough, around August, September, that's exactly when the crows and the badgers come because they are very rich in protein and they like them very much. So they tear open your entire fairway.
Really?
Yeah.
So
it's a very good snack.
So you've got all these bird boxes now along the trees, right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, that's one of the measures we try. We've been trying all sorts of measures. And one of them is if you get sparrows on your golf course, they like, let's say, the Schaefer grubs when they are there in May, June. So they feed on them, which basically makes that they can't lay their eggs and bang. there you go. So
I think just
We
send
can
me
just-
out there
yeah,
with a
but
bucket
that's
of
only
balls
one
and a
of the
6
measures,
iron,
but
and I can
it's
just
a cycle.
excavate them. Just get a real.
Well, then, but the problem is that the divots that you take with the 6-iron salmon
Beaver
are arguably
tail.
worse than the divots that a badger will take. So in September time.
Yeah.
But if anyone knows of how we can get the sparrow migratory pattern to move towards Eindhoven in May,
South
that
Netherlands.
that would be much appreciated.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Can we? You talked about things like education, working with greenkeeping. Again, tying a few things together. We recently did a podcast with John McLaughlin, who's course manager at Wallasey. He says, it's really hard to find good people who want to sort of get into it, and I'd definitely point people towards that episode. But I guess what are the big things, if you could sort of land a couple of things with clubs or people that might listen to this podcast, be them in America, Australia, Europe, Great Britain, what would be the sort of key things from a sustainable golf point of view that you would say, well, do you know what, I'd really love them to do this? Or are there any big secrets out there where clubs or green staff might not know there's some resources there? What are the kind of key things really? You've got a cast of millions you're talking to here, Cees, that you can land a message with.
I'd say, I think the program we're running at the RNA currently is quite good at that, because what we try to do is, education is one of our 5 pillars, and the education part is very important. But since most of the greenkeepers in the Netherlands anyway are being brought up as farmers and listen to farmers but do the opposite is the credo of proper greenkeeping. It's also a matter of a mind switch, and that it's how do you do that? It's because I can't blame a Dutch greenkeeper or some of the Dutch greenkeepers that they think like that, because they have never been taught differently. And so we as RNA, as a governing body in golf worldwide or outside of America and Mexico, we feel that it's our duty to tell the world, and we've set up all sorts of programs to make this more evident and to make this work and to make this more visible, especially because in the old days I think sometimes the RNA was very modest, and it might be very well known in the UK and GBNI, but not so much in Spain perhaps, or in Italy, or in and
well, some of these places are the places that are maybe anti-sustainable, aren't they? I mean, there's places where we play golf.
Well, no, this
is
is
that an unfair take? I don't know.
Well, I'm not wanting to tee you up too much, Cees, but that same discussion I referenced earlier, from earlier in the year, I mean, talking about somewhere like Dubai, for example, which just to us in the context of this discussion screams out somewhere that doesn't seem very sustainable, but it might not be sustainable in terms of the way they're currently preparing courses. But I think you were mentioning earlier in the year how there's actually different grass types in certain climates that you can actually encourage, and you can still play golf there, but it's just not going to be on the basis of
it's not manicured
I was referring to our sustainable agronomy services that we are currently introducing. We first did a pilot in Asia, which was in the middle of COVID, so that was a bit, not ideal. But Chris Gray, our man in Singapore, he did some fantastic work on that. And there's also in those hotter climates, there are all sorts of fine-leaved grasses that are very drought resistant, and paspalum is one of them, for example. So it's just a matter, if a greenkeeper doesn't know that, then why would he bother?
Oh, so they're going to hot climates and just throwing down, just like really hardy grass, throwing a load of water on it, and it's like, there's my golf course, when actually, if they built it in a slightly different image, maybe the more browns, the yellows, rather than looking for rich green, verdant grass. You've got a much more sustainable product on your hand.
It's funny you say that. I always in let's say in the sustainable golf team at the RNA, when we have a new folder or a new brochure, or I say, no, this is way too green, this photograph. This is way too green. So they start taking the mickey out of me and saying, oh, is this brown enough? Is this brown enough?
Pump down the contrast and the saturation. And just,
but the point is that if you want a mind shift, a different mindset, well, you need to show and you need to walk the talk, don't you? So that's why I think it's important in our Open Championships, which is being televised, etc. It shows nice, fast and fiery courses if we can. If we cannot, bad luck. But if we can, we should do it. And they should be showcases because, let's say, the 5 pillars I just mentioned to you, they are all interlinked, aren't they? Well, at least the first 4 are very much interlinked.
100%.
Yeah.
So it's the championship agronomy, and it's the sustainable agronomy services, and it's the education part, and it's the greenkeeping part. So the research part. So there's 4 of them that are interlinked together, and they all should push towards this goal. And it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. I get that, because in hotter climates, of course, you want to do different things, and there are people that know so much more about that than I do. But we have an excellent agronomy team, and they are very good at this. So that's what we are going to use them for, or that's what we are using them for. Yeah.
Perfect. Cees, thank you so much for having us at Eindhoven today. It's been very lucky to see the club. It's been a real pleasure. I've enjoyed chatting about the sustainability stuff. I'm sure there'll be more on it as it continues to evolve. Are there any kind of big commitments? 2030 seems to be like a landmark year. Is that Bruce will be very disappointed the fact that I don't know this, but is 2030, is that like sort of part of a wider commitment around climate and sustainability? Is that like a year that you work towards or anything? Is it just an ongoing project now?
I personally believe it's an ongoing project because, well, 2030 was just a dot on the horizon when we started this 2 years ago. We thought, a scope of 10 years will be nice, so let's call it Golf Course 2030. But we don't mind if people adapt much quicker than that. Mm-hmm. And what we see is, let's say, the first projects that came in, they are about to be delivered as we speak. So we had 65 projects and we selected only 14 out of them because they needed to be specific enough, ready
tangible,
to use solutions,
easy to put in.
Yeah.
Can you give us an example of one? Is there any really, or is that all sort of wrapped up in non-disclosure and stuff? Or
no, it's no. It's they are all on our website as well. So at randa.org, there's a section on Golf Course 2030. But one of them, for example, is about greenkeeping education and what should the colloquium look like, etc. Another one is how can you manage, let's say, proper grasses on parkland courses, for example, because we were just discussing there's the sandy soil is not everywhere, so what should you be doing there? What should be your grass selection there?
And just on that note, sorry to interrupt, but I think you'd like to hear this, that as 3 members of Blackwell Golf Club, Tom, Sam and I, when we got that email from Alistair Beggs on his report on Blackwell. And
that was a great report. It was a good read.
I mean, we obviously all quite liked it, but to hear so many other members who we didn't really think were kind of that passionate about, kind of course agronomy and course architecture and so on, the number of people you'd hear in the bar say, I thought I'll just give this a quick read, and then 20 pages later I thought, oh my God, I've read the whole thing. That's sort of flown by. It's just brilliant to see to see that content that the RNA is kind of pushing out there and how so many clubs can benefit from it, particularly in a parkland context as we've seen at Blackwell. Yeah. Well, what we try to do is to be bespoke, which is let's say what you don't see too often in the market, although some other parties say they are very bespoke. It's much more one size fits all is perhaps slightly exaggerated, but as you mentioned by reading the report on Blackwell Golf Club, I think it was pretty bespoke. And what I heard back from your green committee members and from your head greenkeeper as well is that it's a very good report, and they know what to do now, and they know how they can improve, and they have applied all sorts of measures, and they are seeing the results quite quickly, which is a good thing, and I'm sure your dad will like it. It's
common sense, isn't it? It's just common sense approach to.
I mean, he was saying he still talks about it now. It's just astounding when Alistair went along with the kind of little extraction tool and pulled out like a core of earth and talked about where the thatch was and pulled out a healthy core and then poured the water on the one with thatch and it just sat on the top and didn't go anywhere. And they're like, wow, this is...
But that's because we've evolved to look at the wrong things, you know? We've evolved to keep looking at stimp reading as a measure for how good our greens are, rather than looking at soil composition, like you say, biodiversity, looking at clegg readings, looking at the type of grass that we're breeding in there to go, okay, great. Because even things like, you know, clegg is like you can get really firm greens, but to what end is what's the substrata of the soil looking like? It's strange. How much is technology going to be a big part of this? Because you know, golf is never a level playing field, is it? If you go to an Open Championship venue, they can give you moisture readings at any square inch on the golf course. If you go to your local municipal, it's done much more by hand and by eye and by people who are used to it. How much is technology going to change that and level the playing field?
I think it's huge on one hand, but on the other, I should think that even a small municipal golf course could have very healthy and proper playing surfaces, because I mean it's not just the speed, it's the length of your root structure, so it is the quality of your root structure where it all starts, isn't it? And and you take it from there, exactly. And let's say the stimp readings or anything, that should only be the final product of a very proper way of managing your playing surfaces. And it's light, it's air, it's making sure that your drainage is in order, so enough top dressing and frequently enough, etc., etc. So it's pretty basic stuff to get a healthy.
Doesn't need to be too complicated.
It gets more complicated. Let's say if you want to bring it to absolute tournament standards. And that is where technology can be of great help. But I do realize that not every golf club, especially in these days, can afford all sorts of fancy equipment and what have you. So they, as long as they stick to the top 4 or 5 basic principles, I'm pretty sure they can deliver very healthy playing surfaces. And a healthy playing surfaces is the excellent basis to get a good, proper performing playing surfaces. So year
round as well.
It all starts at the very core.
Yeah, it's refreshing.
At the very heart.
It's refreshing.
You know, and I think so many people in the UK think about the golf season sort of starting to wane as you get into October, and then maybe it goes quiet until April, May time. But actually, again, it comes back to if you have the right surfaces and you have robust sort of root structures, and you do the basic things like scarifying and earth draining and putting sand down, you're going to be able to play all year round, and it's going to be more pleasant. Actually,
plus there's always one thing: the average greenkeeper absolutely believes that, let's say, in your top 10 centimeters, they need 25 or 30% moisture. No way, they don't.
Really?
I mean, 18%, 15% is quite enough, and we went, so at least the healthy grass grows ideally around between 15 and 18%. And they're just like the extra 10% for safety.
It's just insurance.
That's insurance.
And
Absolutely.
it softens the way the course plays as well. It's like you want them playing firm if you can.
Yeah. And also, I mean, if you have kept your golf course dry during the summer, at least there's more buffer capacity for the autumn rains to come and the winter rains to come. Whereas if you start your autumn with a pretty wet golf course, well, then it will go.
You'll be underwater in no time.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, Cees, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and kind of enlightening us all in the great work that the RNA and the Sustainability Committee, or sorry, I should say the Sustainable Golf Committee.
Very well.
Very
well rescued.
Is doing.
Well remembered.
Don't call it Eindhoven Golf Club either, Bruce, because that would be 2 clangs in a row.
That would be 2 clangs in a row. I should leave you to do this.
You've already let your partner down once today.
Yeah. the less said about that, the better. In fact, that was really just an attempt for you to
I
say
was
how
trying
well
to
you played
pigeonhole-
coming in.
Well, you
Yeah.
listen to the podcast, don't you, Case? And you know I try and shoehorn in at any chance an opportunity to talk about my golf, but I'm going to walk past it on this chance. Thank you so much for having us today and for joining the pod, Case. It's been an absolute pleasure.
It was my pleasure and lovely having you here. And please do come back after this winter and next winter when we have cleared out more trees and the place will be even better. So more than welcome and good luck in the coming days at the other courses.
Thank you.
Very happy you like the Netherlands and Dutch golf.
We love it.
Watch
Thank you.
this.